Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And finally, check out our new Alter Sleeves. Get your custom sleeve image of the Magic Mics crew at altersleeves.com/magicmics. That's right, get you now. As awesome. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello, everybody.
Ruben Bressler.
That's the first time I've heard that promo. That's great.
Yeah, new promos. Altersleeves.com/magicmics.
Did you practice in the mirror?
Good way to start the new year.
Did not practice in the mirror. In fact, if you're watching the pre-show, you'll get to hear that practice yourself. We also began with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 cards of 2020. Ruben?
Well, 2020 was a heck of a year. Thank goodness it's over, as we will discuss on this week's show. But we thought that there was a little bit of an omission, and Daij John is the winner of this week's honorable mention. Some people just want to see the world burn. As such, I'm going to nominate Negan the Cold-Blooded. Don't get me wrong. I hate this card and everything it stands for a multitude of reasons, and I wish it wouldn't exist. Which is exactly why I think it nicely represents 2020 in a nutshell. Winky face.
Which certainly makes a lot of sense.
By the way, I see them in the comments all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we certainly appreciate you being part of the show. Now, those who don't know, Negan the Cold-Blooded showed up in a secret lair drop for The Walking Dead. This is a tournament legal card that you can't buy anywhere because they don't let you no more.
It's like a $15 card, isn't it? It's fine.
Yeah, $10, $11.
Well, this is the 3-color. This is like a Mardu.
This is the Mardu.
Yeah,
so it's a black.
Not that expensive.
Yeah, it's a black, a white, a red, and 2 generic mana. So for 5 mana, it's a 4/3 legendary human rogue. When Negan enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls. Then those choices are revealed, and that player sacrifices those creatures. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. So I think mechanically, this card's sweet.
It's a super cool ability because you're sort of playing a little bit of mind games with your opponents. They want to try to choose the same creature you're choosing, so that you only sacrifice 1. But if you mind game them, then they get 2.
Exactly. So they're obviously going to say the biggest creature on the board. Well, are they?
What
if they? And then you say the biggest creature, and they pick something else. You're like, oh.
There's a little bit of a goblin game, a little bit of a goblin psychopath action going on here.
Yeah, so while I too dislike the drop and everything it stood for and so on and so forth, it was still a really cool card, which was appreciated. So thanks for Daij John for being a part of the show. Please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them. It's like a newborn baby. It happens every day.
Yeah.
Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because it's time to talk about the top 10 worst cards of 2020.
Yeah. This was a weird list.
How did we define? I define it a bunch of different ways. I'm kind of going to have to give a weird preamble to all my picks as to why I think this is the worst, because there's a whole variety of reasons why.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I have a couple cards that had a lot of hype and then just didn't really live up to it. I have a couple cards that are just very confusing, where you're like, who is this for? Like, who has this ever worked? Why would I ever play this? And then I have some controversial ones that are that some people think is a good card, and then I tried it and I was like, this is not a good card. So we'll see where this episode goes.
My list is, I look at my list and it just makes me upset. I'm just not happy looking at my list. And I wanted to pick cards that, for whatever reason, made me upset. Whether they were poorly put into a set, or were disappointments upon release, or make me mad, or have bad gameplay, in my opinion. There are a number of possibilities on my list.
Well, how about you kick us off here with our number 10, Ruben?
Yeah, my number 10 is a card that I remember being excited to see what was going to be the mythic in a certain thing. So when Jumpstart came out, there were a bunch of different ability or different decks that you could get. And each of them had a signpost, a iconic mythic to go along with them. And, I was very excited when I was like, ooh, Brewvac the Grand Eloquent. That's cool, right? Allosaurus Shepherd, very neat. Immolating Gyre, that's awesome. I wonder what the Defender mythic is going to be. Some super awesome wall, some cool card advantage engine. No, we got Towering Titan, which is a piece of actual garbage. so bad that it would never go into my Arcades the Strategist Defenders deck. It's so bad. Towering Titan is 4 colorless green for a 0/0 giant that enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the total toughness of other creatures you control. It has the ability sacrifice a defender. All creatures gain trample until end of turn. Now, it's going to be like a 15-15, right? Even if it's a 30-30, though, you're still it's probably just dying to a Doomblade, and sometimes it's dying to a Doomblade and taking a defender with it. Right? Because you're trying to give it trample after they block, and then they'll just kill it later. This thing has never been good in even the Jumpstart games that I've played. It's just so frustrating.
I mean, you say that, but it's almost a $4 card, so somebody's
but that's on the low end of Jumpstart, by the way. That's what
I mean, I agree with you, though. I do think it is kind of pulling in different directions, where it's like, so, X is the total toughness. All creatures gain trample. But if you're playing a deck that's primarily made of defenders, what are you giving trample to? I mean, if you have Assault Formation or if you have the Arcades, yes.
Right.
But like, it seems like it's pulling in different directions. It needs a certain number of stars to align. It just seems like it's a lot of work.
It seems like a lot of work, and
yeah,
you're sacrificing like your other defenders. Like if it had said something like exile a defender from your graveyard, or discard a defender, or something that you're still attached to the defender, but you're not like losing their own crap, because then they just Doomblade this and you look like an idiot.
Yeah, and it also does nothing on an empty board. Like if your opponent wraths and you top deck this, it's a 0/0.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing with this card at Mythic?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of gross. Aaron, what's number 10?
Well, speaking of eggs, my number 10 is a card that when it was first previewed, there was a lot of speculation as to how broken it was. And people started to share kind of an aha moment, where when people read the text of this card, they were like, oh no. And they started posting all of the silly things you could possibly combo with it. And people were going, this is going to be broken in Commander. This is going to lead to really unfun gameplay. And it not only ended up being, in my opinion, the weakest of the Commander 2020 precons, but also just a generally weak Commander. I don't know anybody who's played this. I have not faced it personally. I haven't heard any rumblings of people wanting to build it. And I certainly haven't seen the combos that people were afraid of. My number 10 is Gavi Nest Warden. So Gavi Nest Warden is 2 colorless, a blue, a red, and a white. Human Shaman, legendary creature, 2 power and 5 toughness. You can pay 0 rather than pay the cycling cost of the first card you cycle each turn. So people were going, oh, you can cycle Decree of Annihilation for free. Yeah. This is terrible. And I was like, oh no. I'm just looking at all the other decrees, just going, okay, think about it. You can cast any decree for free. This is terrible. And so obviously Twitter was up in arms about that. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur cat creature token. So I didn't really hear a lot about that, but I remember when this set came out, my boyfriend and I had picked up a couple of the decks just to have something to do during quarantine, and I got stuck with this one, and it was just terrible. Like, he ran me over with the Mardu deck. I was doing all of nothing, and so not only was it just a weak precon, but it also just didn't really live up to the fears that people had for it, and just kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I remember this card had some hype to it, where people were like, oh, we've got the new cycling abilities, we've got the Zenith Flare deck, this is going to be a really interesting deck in Commander, and then Bubkiss.
You're dead before it'll matter.
Yeah, this card's worth about 40 cents or so.
Yeah.
So, worth every penny, y'all.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Well, for my number 10, this is one of those cards that, like, I was just looking through the cards, looking through the sets and whatnot, and I came upon this card and I was like, wait a minute. I don't like this card. And I kept thinking about it. I kept reading it. I was like, okay, this card's really bad. And I kept looking at it. And I'm like, damn, this card's like really seriously awful. And I'm like, because one of the problems of making this list in particular was that Wizards doesn't these days really make a lot of bad cards. They're all generally okay and
I think
interesting.
You said that mythics nowadays, there's no such thing as like a bulk mythic. Like, even the mythics are starting at like $5.
Exactly. So like when they don't pop out the trees of redemption or whatever, you kind of start looking a little bit closer. And I was like, wait a minute, I really freaking hate Gadrak the Crown Scourge.
What?
This card is terrible. It is a 3 mana, red and 2 generic mana for a 5/4 rare legendary dragon. It has flying. It can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts. And at the beginning of your end step, you create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. So it can't attack unless you have 4 artifacts. So there's a hoop. It gives you artifacts. It gives you those treasure tokens, but only for non-token creatures and only on your turn. So if you block something on their turn and it dies, you don't get no treasure token. You don't get no way to attack with this thing. You can block with this thing, but you can't attack with it. So after you jump through all these hoops, you're either killing your own stuff or you're somehow playing a bunch of artifacts. Then maybe you might get to attack with your 4 toughness dragon. Like, what the hell? This card is terrible. This card is bad.
This thing is weird. I think that people expected it to be okay. I mean, it's a 5/4 for 3 with evasion that you needed some hoops to jump through, but the hoops that you need to jump through are too much.
They're crazy high. It's silly.
I give them credit for trying to do new things with red, because as I've said before, I don't dislike red. I just don't like red in a burn sense, but I love experimental frenzy, and I love when they try new things with red. And so this was something I was actually considering putting in my Pashalik Mons deck, because it's a Goblin Aristocrats deck. And so this reminds me a lot of the kind of the Grim Haru specs cards, the cards that you typically want in an Aristocrats deck, where you're going to be sacrificing things and getting something for it. And I mean, for that niche kind of deck, I guess you might want it, but in general, it kind of seems like it goes against what red wants to do. Doesn't red want small, hasty, aggressive creatures? Why would
the delayed trigger also messes everything up? I do like the association with treasure tokens and dragons that they're coming up with,
which I like.
This one is like, it's just doesn't come together.
Right. When you compare this card to the Goldspan dragon that just came out in Kaldheim, now that's a sexy dragon that has to deal with treasures and artifacts and mana, and that's sweet. And this is the literal exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what you got?
There are a number of words in Magic the Gathering that when you hear them, you immediately become excited. And 2 of those words are Nyx and Lotus. There was a lot of hype behind Nyx Lotus when it first came out. And it sure hasn't done a ton. Nyx Lotus is a 4 colorless mana legendary artifact that enters the battlefield tapped and has tap, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. So people, we've seen a couple of, the mono blue Nyx Lotus deck exists. But it's
cute
like,
there for a minute.
People were like, wow, this card is scary. Can you imagine how much mana you're going to get? It's like, well, you can imagine it. It just won't happen.
I think the problem with this card is that people wanted Nykthos, quite honestly. Like, we knew we were going back to Theros. The spoiler season is going on. We get to like the end of this, because this was revealed late in the game. And so we get to the end of the spoiler season and people are doing the number crunching and they're like, okay, give us our devotion payoff. And they're like, okay, Wizards is like, we heard you. We got you. And people were like, this is not, you hear the meme of like, we have Nykthos at home. This is what Nykthos at home was. And so, unless you were playing something like the mono blue Kiora, untap and Thassa's Oracle, you just weren't really doing too much with this. It was a lot of work, quite honestly. It comes in the battlefield tapped. And it just had really big shoes to fill that it was never going to fill, quite honestly.
I tried to play the deck for a little bit. The mono blue thing was kind of cute for a moment, but entering the battlefield tapped was the number one thing that killed the deck. It can't, you have to be able to fire something off. It doesn't affect the board. It does nothing. You just say go and they do whatever they want for a whole of the turn. And if they blow it up, then you look like even more of an idiot. So this is, and would you call that a success to have a card that looks really cool but ends up not being very cool?
Yeah.
In some ways it's a win for Wizards, right? They didn't break anything.
It didn't break anything, but also no one's excited.
There we are. Aaron, what's number 9?
My number 9 is a card that was perceived to be an olive branch, because one of the most popular topics right now is how white needs a lot of help. And this was one of the first cards that was previewed from Magic 2021. And if I remember correctly, a lot of the fanfare surrounding its preview was Wizards saying, like, we see you. Like, we hear your feedback. We're going to attempt to make white better. And this is one of our first attempts at doing so. And some people seem to really like this card. It does go for between $7 and $8 online. It does see play in Commander. I picked it up for my Queen Marchesa deck and I just have not been impressed with it, and I immediately took it out. My number 9 is Mangara the Diplomat. So Mangara is 3 colorless and a white. He was originally printed in M21, legendary creature, human cleric, 2 power and 4 toughness with lifelink. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you, and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. And whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. Every time I've played this, my opponents can read the card. And so they're like, well, I can attack you. I don't want to give her a card. Okay. Or they'll cast their spells and they're like, nope, I'm just going to give you one. And so anybody with half a brain is not going to let you run away with this. And, you know, eventually they're just going to get to a point where they're just going to laugh at your 2/4, where it's like, okay, I'll just boop you with a Rune Scar Demon. Like, nice 2/4, idiot, you know? And so, you know, I appreciate the effort. You know, it's a beautiful card. Obviously, Mangara is a very popular, you know, beloved character that goes all the way back to, you know, some of the early sets of the game. But I just have been very disappointed with this card. And I was just like, who is giving you this? Like, who's walking into this?
You know, looking at it the way it is right there, did they literally try to solve White's problems by making a Punisher mechanic card? Like, what?
This is White's thing for a while, is White seems to only reward you if you're behind, which is so weird.
Yeah, the problem with Mangara is that if it were backwards, it would be good. If it was like, if your opponent attacked you with 0 or 1 creatures, draw a card, and if they cast only 1 spell, draw a card. But as written, this is good against aggro decks. This is good if your opponent's playing a bunch of 1-drops. But it's not good if your opponent is like, attack you with 1 Rune Scar Demon and cast a Gristlebrand. Like, you know, the big heavy haymakers in Commander aren't doing anything for you.
Yeah.
I mean, 2/4 for 4 with lifelink with those 2 draw abilities, good against goblins, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just thinking of it the other way around sounds way more interesting. Like, make them play 2 spells a turn at least. Otherwise, you could draw a card.
Something.
That's cool. Like, that's a hoop they have to jump through. They're not going to have that forever. All right. Well, oh wow. Moving on here to my number 9. Now, I love Kamigawa, all right? You know I love Kamigawa. I got the Kamigawa deep down. It's seared into my soul. I love it a lot. And so when Wizards is like, hey, we're going to do a Kamigawa thing, and I'm like, all right, y'all, I'm ready to go. Let's make this happen. And they're like, okay, we're not going to give you 5. We're going to give you 6 different enchantments in M21. I mean, all about it. All about it. And I'm trying to pull it up now. Come on, Scryfall. And I was looking at all of them, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of neat. All right, that's kind of neat. And then I got to Sanctum of Shattered Heights. This card is atrociously horrible. Think about what's going on with this card, y'all. It's a red and 2 generic mana for an uncommon legendary enchantment shrine. For 1 generic mana, discard a land or a shrine card. That's not discard a card. You have to discard a land or a shrine card. And what do you get for doing that, y'all? Well, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, not even a player. Creature or planeswalker. X is the number of shrines you control. So you're telling me I had to pay 3 mana. I had to pay more mana and discard a very specific type of card in order to deal 1 freaking damage. I don't give a damn if I've got 5 shrines out. I had to do all that for 5 damage. That's a ton for so little. And I understand you want it to have a cumulative effect, but this is embarrassing. This is awful.
The stopgaps and we can't make this card 2 goods on this card are so many. Like, you have to pay a colorless.
It's going to be 1 mana and no one would have
a land or a shrine, and it only deals 1. Like, it is so carefully made to not be good. In any friggin' way. To be like a seismic assault effect, which is a cool idea in theory.
Yeah.
To be a seismic assault effect, and then just like,
it could have been twice X to creature or planeswalker.
Sure.
I mean, guys.
X+1.
X+2. Something. Give me something. But for God's sakes, you made me pay 4 mana all these turns, discard a certain thing, and 1 damage? Get out of here.
Not even to a player.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big thing.
Having to discard the thing that you need, which already is in short supply, where,
Right.
if you're playing a shrine deck in Commander, you're only playing 1 copy of them.
Of
And so
each,
it's
yeah.
like, well, I need these shrines, but I'm going to get rid of these shrines. Again, it's just pulling you in different directions.
And in
where it's like,
draft, you're not getting a ton of uncommons anyway.
yeah.
Nope. And I saw someone try to play this in limited. It was
I've played it in limited.
hilarious. It was
I've
hilarious.
played it in limited. It's fine.
It's all right.
It's repeatable removal,
If you
but
get
it's
it,
like
yeah.
a bad pestilence.
Yeah.
Like a really bad pestilence.
Really bad. Moving on here to number 8. Ruben, what you got?
Look, there's bad timing, and then there's bad timing.
Oh boy.
Right? So when Ikoria was coming out, we had these Godzilla promos, right?
Oh.
And they had a bunch of
Oh, no.
excellent, hilarious names, like BioQuartz Godzilla and Impetuous Doom or whatever else. And they made one for Void Winnower, and they named it Space Godzilla Death Corona. Now, what happened was the coronavirus, better now known as COVID-19, was just getting its feet wet in America at the time. And so this card comes out just as the coronavirus is taking off, and they had to release a statement on Space Godzilla Death Corona to mitigate the PR disaster that was potentially incoming. And so then they renamed it to Void Winnower.
Void Beckoner.
Void Beckoner.
Yeah.
Void Beckoner, sorry.
Yes.
Well, no, Space Godzilla Void Invader is
No.
the new version of the promo.
Right. The card that was actually printed was Void Beckoner.
Void Beckoner is the
Right.
card that appears in Ikoria packs.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
And then-
promo of Space Godzilla Death Corona, they stopped printing those, and then they made Void Invaders.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, they sort of had to pump the brakes pretty quickly on this card.
It took me a second too. Like, I remember when this card first got previewed, I was going to change it to my Twitter name. Like, because some people do, like, Olivia will do like Olivia, Bearer of Steel or something like
Right.
that. And so I was like, I've done like Aaron Graveyard's Grace before and like really catchy things like that. The minute I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm going to be a
Yep, wait a second.
literally like delete. Like, I'm adding it in my profile. I'm like, Aaron.
Oops.
Oh.
Oh
Delete.
God. Oh God.
No.
You were almost the main character on
Yeah.
Twitter that day. You got so close. Yeah, this card was only in the first run of the set did they print these, and then they immediately changed it to something else and printed the rest of them, which of course led to people trying to rush by the ones with the name on it or whatever, but that's just
I think they're down to like $5 though. So I guess if you really want one.
you too can
a
have an
souvenir?
awkwardly named promo
To
from
remember
a weird time.
2020 fondly with your Death Corona.
Oh my God.
All right, so Aaron, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is a card that was recently hyped up in Commander. One of the things they tried to do with this last Commander's Legend set is they wanted to give a lot of characters actual cards this time. And so this is a character that we had seen referenced only once in the Magic storyline, and they officially made him a character. And people were looking at this and going, oh my God, this is broken, this is good. And people were trying to find all these ways to break it, and nobody seems to have been able to do that. I remember specifically looking at people who were hype about this card, and then Commander Legends comes out, and then 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, I've got nothing. And so, and so this card just kind of fizzled. My number 8 is Navinral Urborg Tyrant.
Yeah.
So Navinral is 3 colorless, a white, a blue, and a black. He's a legendary creature zombie wizard. 3 power, 6 toughness, hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. When Navinral enters the battlefield, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token for each creature that died this turn. And then when Navinral dies, you can pay 1 colorless, and when you do, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So it does have the disc part, Navinral's disc, stapled onto it. And it does have this really neat kind of ability that lets you get zombies for, when creatures, if creatures died and then you play Navinral, you get zombies. And that hexproof is pretty strong. Artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. That gets rid of a lot of possible types of removal. And so people saw a lot of potential with this card. People loved the flavor of this. They loved the callback to Navinral, Larry Nevin. But the card just ended up not being very good. And there were people on Twitter that were like, I tried and I just couldn't really make it work. And so, I don't really know what the problem was. I don't know if it was too busy. I don't know if it's just there were better options. But, the same people that were like, I'm going to break this, it just kind of came back and were like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it appears that there's a whopping 244 decks on ADH Rec. That's 0.052% of all the decks. But people use Gift of Immortality, Supernatural Stamina, stuff like that Kaya's ghost form to keep sort of bringing
Yeah,
it back
to
over and over again.
blink it from the graveyard,
which
sure.
is kind of cute, I guess.
It's all
but,
right,
I
it's
mean,
fine.
it almost feels like, sometimes they kind of over cute, over clever themselves,
Yes.
And
I'm
might have
personally
done that here.
okay with this character, which, by the way, doesn't have a ton of history behind it, but
No.
we know the name from the disc.
Right.
This being not great is fine with me, but
It's
it
all right.
certainly is not great.
I was not expecting it to be quite a big a thud as it was.
It's true.
So for my number 8, this is my good old-fashioned own personal pick. I hate playing against this card. I hate it. I hate what it does to Zendikar Limited. I hate it. I hate how difficult it is to remove. I hate how it has like the perfect toughness to like drive me insane. I hate how every time you play a land, Ruin Crab mills you for 3 cards. On turn 1. They always have it. And
always
sometimes
have Ruin
they
Crab.
got it on turn 2 because they got 2 copies because the universe hates me. Ruin Crab is a blue mana for an 0/3 uncommon crab that has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. I freaking hate this stupid card. I hate it. I hate
The
it.
fact that blue-black rogues, the best one-drop in blue-black rogues, is a crab is hilarious. I don't think anyone has, I mean, in recent memory, a mill deck has not been competitive. And this, combined with the daring Sky Thief, and, you go turn 1 crab, turn 2 another crab, Fabled Passage, mill you for 12. Like, that's a lot.
This is one of this card has also given Modern Mill a sense of legitimacy. Like Modern Mill
8
is
crab.
a competitor
Now you
now.
got 8 crab.
It's not a joke anymore. It's like a tier 1.5 deck. Like it's not terrible. And
It's the right number to be competitive, essentially. And when it's that number in limited, oh my god, this thing just runs away with games and drives
I've
me
also always been a little bit upset that crabs don't have power. Like, why is this an 0/3 and not a 1/1?
They pinch.
Right? Because they got the pinchers.
They pinch. I pinch. We want to hear to number 7. Ruben, what you got?
My number 7 is another card from Zendikar with landfall that is very stupid. And so stupid, in fact, that they had to redesign Arena and, like, do big update because of how stupid Scoot Swarm is. And it would just like put 8,000 copies of itself onto the board, and then the game would crash. Scoot Swarm is 2 colorless and a green for a 1/1 insect with landfall that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. I don't know if you know how factorials work, but boy howdy does this get big fast. It's a problem.
Scoot Swarm, more like Sugly Swarm, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
take
you
that
so
one.
sugly.
Oh, hey. Yeah, this card was ridiculous. Actually led to them saying, hey, 250 tokens is enough for anybody because you're breaking our servers with your ridiculous Scoot Swarm decks. And it's not that they were even playing it against other people. They were just playing it against the computer, Sparky or whatever, to try to get 1,000,000
To get
tokens.
a YouTube video.
Yeah, to get a silly YouTube video where they crash the servers.
Yeah,
Great.
it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's a silly card, and I really despise playing against it in limited, where it just gets completely out of control.
Yeah, it's unbeatable and limited.
Yeah, it's difficult. I dislike creatures that are like, you have the answer this turn, or it's just over.
And sometimes it doesn't even matter. If you go turn 6, Scoot Swarm, play a land, they have to have 2 answers.
Exactly. Or it's just over.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a card that had all of the earmarks of being broken. This was a card that I was really excited about when I first saw this. A lot of people looked at this and were like, there's something here. We don't know what it is, but we're convinced that this is a thing. And it just doesn't appear to be the case. It doesn't really appear to be a thing. The only people that have really shown any interest in it are like the Aliantrazis of the world, that are the only people that can make a deck like this happen. People even tried it in older formats because, again, it had all of the earmarks of a really busted engine. I'm still holding out hope, though. You know, it is only 2021. This card is still standard legal. There is always time, especially in older formats. A card can always just come out of nowhere and be good. I want this to be good. My number 7 is Song of Creation. So Song of Creation is 1 colorless, a green, a blue, and a red as an enchantment from Ikoria. You can play an additional land on each of your turns. Great. Like, this sounds wonderful.
Dope.
Whenever you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. But hello.
Hello. We're interested.
At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand.
Oh.
there's something here.
There's something here.
Sees it, but if people have tried. Like the last couple like early access events, like Yeoman 5 or like any of the brewers will always throw out like, here's attempt number like 752 at a Song of Creation deck, and it never works. But damn it, we want this to be a thing, and it's just not. And maybe we haven't figured it out. But.
You know, I have a feeling
I've killed myself to my own Song of Creation more than I've wanted.
Yeah.
This to me looks like one day they're going to shave a mana or do hybrid mana or something weird with this mana cost, and you're going to have all of that text, except at the end it says at the beginning of your end step you lose the game, and it'll be an instant or sorcery for like 2, maybe 3 mana, and it'll be like, go nuts.
Got like
you're going to lose.
Of nature effect. Yeah.
Yep. You better win it now.
You know, you can definitely do something with a bunch of 0 mana artifacts and storm people out, but it doesn't really work in standard. There's not really you want there to be a Heartbeat of Spring deck. You want there to be a Rites of Flourishing deck here, and it just hasn't happened.
Or it just may not. Maybe it is just a bad card.
Yeah, it could be. Well, speaking of bad cards, there's also bad answers. You remember Teferi Time Raveler? Remember that guy?
Yeah.
You remember how he just ran standard?
Yeah. Now it's older formats.
And now it's older formats too. Well, don't worry, this card sucks there too. So Wizards was like, we got you. We hear you. We understand that Teferi is a serious problem. And what we have brought for you, ladies and gentlemen, are our Magic player du jour. Let me tell you. The answer to Teferi was not Spark Hunter Masticore.
Yep.
It was 100% not Spark Hunter Masticore. This card is absolutely terrible. It is a rare from M21. It's a 3 generic mana 3/4. So, okay, 3 mana 3/4. Yeah. Artifact Creature Masticore. Okay. As an additional cost to cast it, discard a card. That's not when it enters the battlefield, by the way. That's to cast it. So when they counter it, you look like an idiot. It has protection from Planeswalkers. And for 1 generic mana, it deals 1 damage to target Planeswalker. And for 3 generic mana, it doesn't. Who gives a damn? This card is terrible. No one likes this card. It is trash. I am sorry. I'm seriously. For 3 generic mana, you can give it indestructible. But it doesn't matter. This card is absolutely terrible and useless. And I hate
3 mana for an activated ability in this economy? Get out of here. This card, and also 1 mana to deal damage to a Planeswalker in this economy. Get out of here.
Doesn't matter.
What would you? I would rather have any 2-drop than this as an answer to Teferi. Really,
Yes,
like a 2/2 for 2 is better than this as an answer to Teferi, because at least that puts pressure. This doesn't do anything the turn you cast it. They cast their Teferi and tick up. You play a Spark Hunter Masticore as your answer to their Teferi. Then they untap and cast spells. Like it doesn't matter.
They're up a card. You put yourself down a card and say go. Like
stupid.
What is happening? Like this thing should have destroyed a Planeswalker when it enters the battlefield and done everything else and give you a ham sandwich because this thing is crap. All right.
Yeah.
So we went to number 6. Ruben, what you got?
So we're gonna go from really bad cards to really good cards.
This is actually where I take the turn here as well.
The problem is that being a good card doesn't make you a good card. You know what I mean? Like being a powerful effect doesn't make gameplay interesting or fun. Having a extremely powerful ability on an undercosted thing that's brand new and shiny doesn't necessarily make Magic a better game. They did something in Commander Legends on a 3 mana 3/2 with flash called Opposition Agent that is very stupid.
What?
It's horrendously bad gameplay.
Wow.
So Opposition Agent is 2 colorless and a black for a 3/2 human rogue with flash. Your opponent, you control your opponents while they're searching their libraries, and while an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. I know what a Magic card looks like when it's going to make someone quit Magic. This card will make people quit Magic. People will say, this game isn't fun. This is a card that is very good. It is not fun. It is not traditionally. It is not a good Magic
fun. Yeah, this isn't the gameplay you write home about. This isn't maybe you wrote home about it and then they threw their deck in the trash can over it.
This should have just been 3/2 for 3 with flash. Your opponents can't search libraries.
I mean, it's tricky because
everything has to do everything these days.
It's tricky because it is tutoring is such an important part of Commander, and some would even argue that it's too much of a thing. That the 'cause when we're having like the rule zero conversation, usually one of the things that people will mention is how many tutors are you running, because that can be indicative of your power level, where I'm only running like Diabolic Tutor, I'm only running, I'm running Beseech the Queen, that you can usually tell the strength of the tutor kind of gives you an idea for how strong the deck is going to be. And so if you are up against that person that's like, yeah, I've got a demonic and vampiric, and yeah, what are you gonna do about
and
it?
Infernal,
then
and
you
Grim,
might need an opposition agent for that person. But I think it ultimately relies on the person using it to be responsible. If you're going to do this in response to a fetch, you're probably not a good person. But I promise you, there are decks out there that are just one tutor away, one whatever, and they're just going to run the game.
But you look at development and how they twist knobs on the Nest Warden, on the Shattered Peaks, and you're like, look at all the stopgaps they put on all these other cards. And then you look at Opposition Agent, and they just kept adding stuff to it to make it even better. Like, this could have been a 3/2 flash for 3 that only had the first 2 lines of text, right? They didn't need that last paragraph. They could have made the second line worse, and it still would have been a legacy playable card.
This card is in 15% of all decks on EDH Rec.
Crazy.
That's insane.
And then that's fair. That's entirely fair. I think it's obvious they wanted this card to also see Eternal play, because obviously, Doomsday has been a thing for a while in both Legacy and Vintage, and this is a nice answer to those decks. And so I agree with you. I definitely think it's a little excessive, but I do also think that there was a need that this card was, or a niche that this card was looking to fill.
Aaron, what's number 6?
My number 6 is the only higher on my list.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, as Ruben mentioned, sometimes it's not always the terribly designed or the misfires or whatever you want to call them. Sometimes it can be a huge card in one of the sets from last year. Sometimes it can be some of the marquee cards of the set from last year. Because, look, as much as I enjoy resolving this card, it is not a super duper fun card. As I have said once before, many, many times, nobody beats UGIN. UGIN, the Spirit Dragon, is my number 6. This card is ridiculous. This card, like, nothing beats it. It just resets everything. Just go home. You're done. Magic starts over from now. It's 8 generic mana. You paid a lot, I get it. But for 8 generic mana, 7 loyalty, Legendary Planeswalker UGIN, Mythic from M21. For +2, it deals 3 damage to any target. -X, exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. That's 1 or more colors, aka just reset everything. And for -10, you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield, and then you get a lollipop. And
they put it in a standard where ramp and green reigned supreme.
That was the problem.
What?
The card was fine the first time it was printed.
It was fine
because Reforged.
There wasn't insane ramp at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
But now you've got, Growth Spiral, you've
fires
got
and stuff. Like,
fires, you've got tons of extra ways to get mana.
Yeah.
I have played so many games where I was like, well, the only way I lose is if they top deck UGIN, and then they top deck UGIN, and I can't win anymore.
I've seen
like,
so
it
many
just doesn't.
tweets. Yeah.
There's that colorless deck in Historic, and it's just like you untap and you play UGIN, and that's the game.
That's the game.
We're done.
Yeah.
Like, I've
seen so many tweets from people that are like, I've stopped playing because of UGIN, or I just feel like, I don't even want to bother. Like, it's a pretty demoralizing card. And
it also made a number of archetypes unplayable.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how the setting makes all the difference, because like you said, we were playing this during, the 4-color Tarkir soup era. You were playing this with like Battle for Zendikar. It was like this and like Dragon Lord Atarka, and like it was fine, And then it was like, and
it wasn't backbreaking,
Yeah, but then like it's just so interesting how that reprint in a different era just changes everything.
Yeah.
Just like with Mana Leak, for example. Mana Leak, when it came out in Stronghold, it was fine. It was perfectly reasonable.
It was right next to Counterspell.
You reprint it in a deck that is able to use it as an aggro card alongside Delver of Secrets, and suddenly it's a problem. So it's all context dependent.
Yeah.
And then they kept that Mana Leak in for another year, just like the Titans.
Right. Well,
kicked Tom Pelly in the balls.
The Mana Leak problem, again, it's all context dependent. UGIN's fine if you don't have Uro and Growth Spiral to play alongside it.
Or Escape from the Wilds, or whatever.
Or Escape from the Wilds, yeah.
Let's move here to number 5. Aaron, what's number 5?
My number 5 is one of those cards that I have to ask myself, like, who is this for? Like, who who is achieving this result? I don't understand. This feels like a lot of hoops in a color that doesn't really need this help. This color has already proven to do this thing very well. I get that maybe they were trying something new, but just why? I don't really understand. My number 5 is Root Weaver Druid. So Root Weaver Druid, and I'm going to say it like that all the time, is 2 colorless and a green. It's from Commander Legends. It's a creature elf druid, 2 power, 1 toughness. When Root Weaver Druid enters the battlefield, each opponent can search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They each put one of those cards onto the battlefield tapped under your control, and the rest onto the battlefield tapped under their control. Then each player who searched their library this way shuffles it. So it's ramp in a color that already has Farhaven Elves and Wood Elves and Yavimaya Granger and Llanowar Dryad. I mean, they're not hurting for ramp at all. And your opponent has to give it to you, though. So, like, imagine playing this on turn 3 and then looking at them and going, "Please, sire, can I have a land?" And I don't know about you, but my friends aren't giving me a land.
I was gonna say,
you're giving them 2.
This is just Tempt with Discovery 2.0.
Exactly.
This
is
is just a lot of words for your opponent to say no, thank you.
Yeah.
No,
So you're counting on your opponent giving it to you. It's a color that doesn't need it. There are more reliable options that do not involve giving your opponent things. I just don't understand. Like, why?
This is
cards
the
very bad.
Ooh, Lord. Yeah, this is the Punisher mechanic all over again. Wizards seems to just absolutely fall in love with the Punisher mechanic. They're like,
It's
if
so
your
many
opponent
goddamn words.
Honestly, this seems like a white card. Like the way they're going with
Yeah.
white, make this a
This
knight.
should be a
and
white
just-
card.
yes, make this a white card. At least then it could be interesting, right?
At least then it's interesting. Exactly. If this
This
was
is-
a colorless and a white for a core scout, I would have no problem.
You might even take it. Yeah, but in green, where you already have Cultivate and Kodama's Reach, there's no
There's
reason
no
to
way
play
you're
this.
ever playing this.
It's so weird. It's like you want to rampant growth twice and untap with those lands, and I can rampant growth
Help
once.
your opponent. No
Like,
way.
what is happening with this card? That's awful. My God. Ruben, what's number 5?
So remember, the second verse, same as the first, but a little bit louder and a little bit worse. I mentioned that there was a 3/2 for 3 with Flash printed in Commander Legends that makes people want to quit Magic. This time it's named Hullbreacher.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Hullbreacher is 2 colorless and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Pirate with Flash. If an opponent would draw a card, except the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. Again, this could have just been... Instead, they don't, and we'd have been fine. We don't need the extra text. We don't need it in blue.
Why is
We
it
don't
not
need it in
white?
force of will. We again. What are we doing? Like the fact that this card exists and wasn't given the stopgaps that other 3-color 5-mana legends were given, and then this is just terrible. It's terrible gameplay.
I can't.
It's you're right. It is in the same vein of opposition agent where, other people just aren't playing Magic. And this is another card like opposition agent that is really counting on the pilot to be responsible with it, where yes, this is a niche that needs to be filled. Card draw can be obnoxious in Commander. It is a staple of Commander, and having something to keep that in line is fine. The problem with that is you're also giving people access to Echo of Eons, or, there are people out there that are going to make it so that you just never have cards.
Right.
And so
they're going to cast Windfall.
Right. And so if this was just a stopgap, it might be fine, but, you're counting on the opponent doing the right thing. And also, why are we adding treasures to it? Where, like, it just...
This is that meme with Phoebe and Joey, where she's like, white, taxes, taxes, players, white taxes, players, Hullbreacher is blue. It's like, no, stop! Did you just stop?
Well, they did that with Narset, though. Narset was really, I think, one of the first ones that was like...
Oh,
Fine.
God.
Yeah. Again, though, it doesn't need... Again, I would be happy if this were a white card and it didn't have Flash. And it didn't make treasures. It
I
just
would be
said,
okay.
No, you don't get to do a thing.
I would be okay with all of those if it were just white. If it was just white and
So
two
many,
generic.
all of the 3-mana creatures we've said are like, this should just be a core wizard in white that didn't give you anything and it just stopped your opponent, and we'd be fine with it.
I can't. It's so silly. Well, for my number 5, look, I've made no secret. I don't like mill decks. I don't like milling things. I don't like milling cards, and I sure
But do
as
you like self-mill?
maybe a little bit. At least that's interesting and strategic, right? But when you're milling me for no reason other than to put my stuff in my graveyard, but to kill me that way, I don't like that. It feels really bad. And so I sure as hell am not going to like the legendary version of these freaking advisors as in Bruvac the Grandiloquent. I don't like this guy. It's awful. It's blue and 2 generic mana for a 1/4 mythic legendary human advisor. If an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many instead.
This guy's fine.
He's whatever.
Evan.
I don't like
fine.
him. I don't like the deck. I don't want to encourage people to do that. No.
That's true.
No petitioners. Don't make petitioners.deck. I don't want to play against it. Sure as hell I don't want to see it.
So fun story about this card. So my boyfriend has been talking with various other people in the Commander community that we've played webcam Commander with, and there's been talk of doing like a couples league, and we're both like pretty competitive people, and so like we were talking about it, and like we were talking with these couples, and we were like, oh my god, it would be so amazing. And he goes, I'm gonna build Bruvac, you build Tiny Bones, and we're gonna kill him. And so that's our plan so far. But openly, we're just like, oh wait, we just want to spend time with you guys. We'll get like a veggie tray, and privately we're like,
we will crush you into the ground. We will make you sorry you ever said anything about making a league with these monsters.
Yes.
Jesus. Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
All right, Aaron. What's number 4?
My number 4, we talked about ramp, we talked about the issue with white, and this is just an attempt to do something with white that is just, again, a lot of work. I don't know who this is for. I tried playing it myself, and I just felt like I was kind of chasing my own tail at one point. My number 4 is Cartographer's Hawk. So Cartographer's Hawk is 1 colorless and a white. It's a creature bird from Commander 2020, 2 power, 1 toughness, and flying. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
When Cartographer's Hawk deals combat damage, this does not have haste, to a player who controls more lands than you, again, return it to its owner's hand. So it has to survive a turn, it has to attack, and then it has to attack unbothered. So it has to actually connect.
Yeah.
Then when it does, you return it to your hand just to start the cycle over again. And if you do, you can search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library.
Like, look at all the stopgaps they put on this card so that it wouldn't be busted. Why can't this just stay in play?
Why can't it stay in play? What's wrong with y'all? Where you already put the gap in it that said they have to have more lands than you. That's the balancing part.
And the Verge Rangers came very close to my list. It's just like, why? Like, I appreciate you trying, but like, you're making Weathered Wayfarer worse. Like, you're making bad,
really bad
land
Wayfarer.
taxes.
This is
just over and over again, and it's like, why are you? What are you so afraid of?
Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Write it down.
And then on the flip side, we get Opposition Agent Hullbreacher, and then we get this that has to bounce itself for you to get a basic planes.
You have to wait a whole
I
turn
can't even get an Ameria. I can't even get a non-basic planes.
Yeah.
What a joke. Well, let me tell you.
You got to bleep that. I got so mad I cursed.
We got big bleeps. Big bleeps. What was that, our number 4? Is that right? Yeah. Because that card's terrible. Wow.
Yeah.
This card that came out
this progressively more upset making this list.
Yeah, it makes me mad. This one makes me mad in terms of what it has done to a format. When you have one singular card that then has one other singular card interaction, and in between all of it, it breaks historic. Why is Neostorm still legal in that format? Seagate Stormcaller broke the deck in half. I hate it. I can't stand it. I still play it because I'm a spike and I want to win, but that doesn't mean I like it. I think this is terrible. Seagate Stormcaller is a blue and generic mana for a mythic from Zendikar Rising. At least we thought this was, Snapcaster 2.0 or whatever. It's not. But it broke something else. It's a 2/1 human wizard. Has a kicker of blue and 4 generic mana. So for 5 mana, you can kick it. When it enters the battlefield, you copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 2 or less you cast this turn. When you cast it, if Seagate Stormcaller was kicked, you copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets. So, of course, with Neostorm, you're going to have this plus Neoform, which is going to be copied. And then once you go get your Dualcaster Mage, you just copy the Neoforms over and over and over again. And then you get Glasspool Mimics, and you copy it over and over and over again, and then eventually you'll get a Tuck Rubble for it, and then lastly, you'll get a Combat Celebrant so you can get an extra attack phase. So no matter what happens, they're going to die. That is your combo deck because this card exists, and I kind of low-key hate it.
So this was my number 6.
Nice.
I don't play Historic, so I can't really attest to that. But the reason why it was on my list is because, like you said, this got a lot of buzz for the older formats. I started to see some screenshots of, you know, people using this with Hymnaturok, and I saw people using this with Recall. And so, you know, there was a lot of potential here in terms of really broken things you could do in those older formats where the spells are very, very cheap and very powerful. And it just never really lived up to that hype. You know, other than that initial testing, this card really hasn't seen any play. And so that's the reason why it was on my list. It's just because we were really hoping for some legacy vintage play, and it just didn't really happen.
This is like when you have a movie that has a huge budget, has got like a cast of hundreds, an amazing ensemble, and then it's just atrocious. Like the movie is just bad. Like this has all the pieces to be good. It has all of the earmarks of something that should be good. But it's also got so many things wrong with it, right? Like the only deck it's playable in breaks a format and isn't fun and isn't interactive. There's a whole line. No one's ever kicked this card, and no one's ever going to kick this card.
No, it's
a whole.
a joke.
So there's a whole bunch of text that's irrelevant.
Right, that's completely pointless and ridiculous. And they had a historic shakeup, mind you, where Neostorm was 100% legal. They didn't take anything out. They banned like 30 cards, didn't take one card out of that deck. You can't. This thing has over a 60% win rate right now. Like, Wizards, what are you waiting on? This thing is busted. God. Yeah. All right. Moving on here to number 3. Aaron, what you got?
My number 4 and my number 3 are higher on somebody else's list.
Oh, yes. I'm not just skipping Ruben for giggles. I actually had that written down, so forgive me.
So it's no secret that I love the Monarch. One of my favorite commander decks is my Queen Marchesa deck, or Queen Marchesa. Lord knows there are a couple Euro folks that love to read me in the chat for like, bitch, it's like queso. What are you doing? So I see you, I hear you. So my Queen Marchesa deck. So I love the Monarch. And when Commander Legends came out, we got a whole bunch of new Monarch toys to play with, particularly in Mardu colors. And this was a card that I was really excited about because I'm a single issue voter. I see the Monarch, I like it. But then when you start reading it and you're going, why? It just doesn't, it's kind of very self-defeating. I don't really understand. My number 3 is Archon of Coronation. So Archon of Coronation is 4 colorless and 2 white. It's a creature type Archon, flying in 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Great. I like that. Sometimes you need to take your crown back, you know, because bitches be hateful and you got to take it back. And then it says, as long as you're the Monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life, which sounds cool. You're like, okay, great. I'll just be the Monarch forever. Oh no, that's not how this works. And the flavor text even reminds you of that. Yeah. So when a creature deals combat damage to you, its controller still becomes the Monarch. So you're going to prevent that damage, but something's still going to hit you. Take the Monarch, and then the second clause doesn't even apply anymore, where it's like,
you know, when something deals something and you prevent all of it.
Right. So yeah, so it makes sense from a rules perspective.
They wrote it in a very weird way.
It's dealing you combat damage, it's just dealing you 0 combat damage.
It just seems counterproductive. Where it's
very
like,
stupid.
So you get to be the Monarch, but you're going to lose it anyways, and then it won't even matter anymore.
This card, when they were making this in design, they should have been like, ooh, cool idea. Let's put it away. Let's never print this card.
Let's not just delete that last part. What are we doing here?
This was a fun thought experiment. It should never see the light of day.
Right. Next white mythic idea, please. Thanks.
Something else.
So when we're getting here to my my number 3 here, some big name, big heavy hitters, big stupid. I don't know what's going on with Wizards. I don't know. I don't know who sat down with them and said, the mythics can't be bad. And not only can they not be bad, they have to be so stupidly crazy great. They have to have so many words on them. They have to go on and on and on. And Lord knows we've brought this card up many, many times before they just banned the damn thing. Omnath, Locus of Creation is a gigantic poop stain all over our 2020 year of
with
Magic.
Multiple arms though, then they're colored arms.
Yeah, so it can smear more all over the walls, like in, you know, whatever. Omnath, Locus of Creation is a blue, a white, a green, and a red mana for a 4/4 mythic legendary elemental that I swear to God, I thought it was a meme deck that I played at the pre-release thing, and it took over the entire format, and I hated it. When Omnath, Locus of Creation enters the battlefield, you draw a card. It has landfall Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn, and if it's the second time, you add its mana cost to your mana pool. If it's the third time, it deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you control. I hate this card.
So the play patterns are boring, right? Like every game is exactly the same.
Every game is exactly the same.
Why does it draw a card? Like, aren't we fine with this just not replacing itself? You look at Spark Hunter Masticore, and it costs you card advantage to put onto the battlefield. This compares favorably to Siege Rhino, in that it's a Siege Rhino every turn.
Yes, every single, like, if you had to discard a card as an additional cost to play this guy, I don't think we'd be having these conversations. I'm not sure if it would have been good enough to see hardly any play beyond silly meme decks and pre-releases or whatever. Replacing
it's just too good.
It's a whole nother level of stupid and value and why are you like this and who hurt you.
It shouldn't have drawn a card when it came into play. Drawing a card should have been one of the landfall abilities.
Maybe
probably replacing the mana one.
It's seeing play in Modern. Like, this is what people want to be doing right now, combined with the other toys. This is Modern playable. This is seeing play in Legacy even. You can discard it to force a will, or it can be your win condition.
And I mean, fetch lands are a hell of a thing in a format, and
it's good in every matchup. You gain life against aggro, you get extra mana against mid range, it's a finisher against control. Like, it does everything you want.
It's arguably the most powerful 4-mana creature ever made. Yeah. Moving here to number 2. Ruben, what you got?
My number 2 is a card that was legal in a format for, I think, 52 days.
One of those.
Because Fall from Favor is completely unreasonable and proper. Fall from Favor, another Commander Legends card, 2 colorless and a blue for an aura enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature and you become the monarch. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step unless that player is the monarch. So the monarch is a very cool ability. It's very excellent for multiplayer formats. I think it's very stupid in every 2-player format.
Yes.
Especially Pauper, where card advantage is very tough to come by. And previously, when you had it on Thorn of the Dusk Rose or the removal spell in blue at 3 mana, and you're not expecting it to immediately dominate the format? Come on, guys.
And to let it go for so long. Like,
it went on forever.
It shouldn't have taken you more than maybe 2 weeks worth of results for you to be like, okay, this is bad, and who is enjoying this, and who wants this? And, like, yeah, disenchants exist or whatever, but that doesn't mean the format doesn't just start to warp itself over and over and over about getting this card, rebuying this card, replaying this card, blinking this card, yada, 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 to always stay the monarch. How is that healthy? How did they... You could pre-ban Lurrus. You could pre-ban this. You could understand this is not healthy for a format like Pauper. Like, it doesn't take a Pauper scientist to recognize this is busted.
I think everybody read this card and was like, this is very stupid.
This is very stupid.
If this were an uncommon, okay. I don't care how good your limited environment is with this at common. Like, it doesn't, you can't.
And Wizards just sort of, it was like the popcorn meme of they just put their feet up and ate the popcorn and watched it happen.
And the Pauper's events just got worse, and people fall out of the format, and they were like tired of it and upset, and like
fall out of the format. I see what you did there.
They fell from favor.
They fell directly from favor. Aaron, what's number 2?
So my number 2 and my number 1, I have a feeling are going to be very controversial. And the reason why my number 2 might be controversial is because it's a fine card. Like, if you look it up in MTG Goldfish, it's seeing play in Standard right now. It's seeing play in one specific style of deck, apparently. It's a fine card. It's affordable. You can get it anywhere from $1 to $2. But when you compare it to previous iterations of itself, which have been powerhouses, seeing play in multiple decks, have even seen play in Modern and sometimes even Legacy. And this is supposed to be the star of your story. It's just not enough of an impact. And so I do consider it to be a bit of a failure. My number 2 is Elsbeth Sun's Nemesis. So Elsbeth Sun's Nemesis is 2 colorless and 2 white. She was printed in Theros Beyond Death. Legendary Planeswalker Elsbeth. She comes into play with 5 loyalty. She has a -1 of up to 2 target creatures you control. Each get +2/+1 until end of turn. She has a -2, which is create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. -3, you gain 5 life. She doesn't have any plus pluses. And then she has Escape of 6, 4 colors and 2 white, exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. So this really started this trend of putting the mechanics from a set on a planeswalker. We had Escape on Elsbeth. We then saw Kicker on the Jace from Zendikar Rising. We saw Landfall on the Nissa from Zendikar Rising. But this is supposed to be the star of your story. Like, this is supposed to be what Theros Beyond Death revolves around, that she somehow finds her way out of the afterlife, and she's doing something. And so when you look back at like previous stars of the story, or even her last foray, like when she was the focus of Theros, Elspeth Sun's Champion, do you remember that card? Like, control decks played her, and mid-range decks played her, and modern decks played her, and that card lived up to the hype of being a main character. This card was overshadowed by Uro and Kroxa. It was overshadowed by, you know, when Omnath came out. Like, no one's talking about Elsbeth the way that they talk about supporting characters. And in my opinion, if this is the star of your story, you know, it's fine. If a niche planeswalker is fine if it's like when the niche Kaya came out. Remember we had that Kaya that was like Orzhov, whatever. Kaya wasn't the star of the story though, so that's fine. But like when the star of your story is treated like this niche planeswalker, I think you can do better. And I just was really disappointed by this card.
Yep, 100% agree with everything you said. That's a great pick. I didn't even occur to me that, you know, you have this character that's indelible that is making a huge return because we thought that Elspeth was dead, and you have Elspeth Conquers Death, which became a power player in Standard. Who is this Elspeth? To new players may ask, and how did they conquer Death? Older players may ask, and you see this, and it's like, I mean, it's not great. And also, why is the Escape 6? Like, if the Escape were 4, it'd be a reasonable card and still probably not see much play. Like
I mean, I Planeswalker design is some of the most difficult stuff that they do. I think you can see it definitely in Kaldheim that, you know, sagas are fixed planeswalkers because you can have really cool, interesting effects. You know, they're going to happen once and that's it. When you know the effects can happen over and over, you got to be really careful. When you can rebuy this thing from the graveyard, I think you have to be even more careful. And at some point in all the carefulness, you kind of get rid of all the exciting parts of it. And in some ways, I'm okay with that, right? We don't want this to take over the format, but when it does, like, almost nothing.
But the thing is, I would rather an Elspeth be the best card in Standard than a character I've never met before.
Exactly. Then 2 Titans. I mean, even Clothis. You know, Clothis is seeing play in multiple formats even. Well, we know, you know, and then you have a story. They scrapped the story because of the poor reception from War of the Spark. And so, you know, it was just a really botched opportunity. This was a character that should have had a lot of hype behind it. There should have been a great story moment, a great card, and it just didn't come together.
Like, Elspeth, like, snuck out of hell through, like, a side door or something? Like, what happened? Okay.
They breached the underworld.
They sure did. They opened the door and walked through. Don't even get me
started on that card.
Oh goodness. Well, for my number 2 here, definitely close to my number 1, but had to give it number 2 anyway. Is, you know, part of the best-selling Secret Lair of all time. Also one of the most contentious, upsetting cards. And/or, you know, series of cards ever made. And ain't nothing going to make a Magic player these days more pissed off than Rick Steadfast Leader, our friend from The Walking Dead. Rick Steadfast Leader is 2 white, 2 generic mana for a 3/4 legendary human soldier. As Rick enters the battlefield, choose 2 abilities from among First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. Humans you control have each of the chosen abilities, and as long as you control 4 or more humans you control get +2/+2.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, this is one when we were talking about, we hope there's nothing tournament playable in Secret Lair of the Walking Dead. Well, both this and Glenn saw immediate play in Legacy and Vintage decks. They aren't top tier. They aren't the best things ever, but they saw play. And that's what we were concerned about. This sets a dangerous precedent. This is too weird and too unique of a thing. The weird insignia hologram that's supposed to denote, oh, this isn't in the Magic story, but it is a Magic card. That doesn't really help us. It's just you can only sell your soul once. And
you sold that Black Border the one time, and hey, the best seller of all time. You know, they definitely picked the altar to put it on, but I'm not saying that was a good thing. I hope they never do it again. I hope we never see anything close to this again. Put it in a purple border. Put it in
I'm one of those weirdos who thinks it's fine. Like I just, I respect that people were upset by this. I'm not invalidating that. But, when I look at ultimately what the impact was, that, yes, there were people that were trying to break it, and they were doing it for the memes, when the cards first came out. And I enjoyed that as much as anybody. But we have seen the cards. I have not seen these two scene plays since then. And,
sure.
People made a point. It's fairly affordable, like $25, which is fine. And so, I just can't relate to a lot of the pushback that it received.
And I understand. And, but this is one of those things that, even Wizards at the time, they're like, well, look, we're doing a D&D set. That's not Magic. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's Wizards.
But you own that IP.
That's the Wizard cinematic universe that we're in. We're not in Rick's universe.
Right. There are D&D books with Magic settings. There aren't D&D books with the Walking Dead setting.
I mean,
that's a false equivalency.
Right. It just felt weird. Moving here to our number one worst card of 2020. Ruben, what you got?
I briefly considered just putting all 10 companions as my 10 worst cards of 2021 because it's the worst ability, bar none, not close. But I decided that I would put one at number one and be the signpost for the horridness that was the companion ability. It is the second nightmare on my list after Space Godzilla Death Corona. It is Luris of the Dream Den.
Yes.
Banned
Luris
in
of the Dream Den.
Banned.
Yeah, banned in Vintage for power level reasons. Colorless Orzov for a 3/2 legendary creature cat nightmare with lifelink. With during each of your turns, you may cast one permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard, and it has Companion. Each permanent card in your starting deck has to have converted mana cost of 2 or less, and if this card is your chosen companion, you may put it into your hand from outside the game. Now, for 3 colorless mana, although previously you could just cast it from exile for free, and your opponents could do nothing about it.
There's going to be players as the years go on, as time goes on, that come to Magic, see Magic, find Magic, talk about Magic, and they go, was Companion really that stupid? And we go, yes, you have no idea how it screwed up everything.
What's even worse is you're going to have new players coming to Magic who don't know what an errata is, and they're going to play Luris at their kitchen table.
And it'll probably be okay, right? But
maybe
at the kitchen
it
table,
seems like another card.
It's
going to make your opponents quit Magic.
I mean, as somebody who plays Vintage, these were dark days. Shops and Dredge were essentially forced out of the format, which to have one card, a new card, completely invalidate 2 pillars of Vintage like this, we had never seen that before. And you go back and look at those tournament results, and Luris was everywhere, and Shops and Dredge just weren't. And for the people who don't like those decks because they're very polarizing decks, some people were like, peace and quiet, but then the rest of us were like, that's not okay. We're fine with a card giving us the business. We're not fine with 2 entire years-long strategies just being invalidated like this. And so, for it to be powerful enough, when you pair it with Black Lotus and Lion's Eye Diamond, that's not okay. Like, if you want to loot Mishra's Bauble over and over again, like many of you want to do, I don't enjoy watching it, but it's fine. But when you look at how many games just started with that, how many games started with Luris, Lotus, it was jaw-dropping. And the way that it changed the game, the way that decks were built, even Burn was running this at one point in Modern because they were running like Seal of Fire because they could just, it was just, there was to a certain point, it was nice because it did make people try new cards. But when you weighed it against the other strategies that were completely invalidated, it just wasn't worth it.
Never have I questioned Magic's development side more. Than when I played with Companions. I said, who was okay with that?
We've made no secret of the fact that there were a lot of rumors going around when the Companions came out that people were not happy. Like we had heard that WotC Brass wasn't happy because this was seen as a catastrophic mistake. And we've kind of learned to laugh at the previous mistakes, like, Oro, don't dig through time, silly. And we've never really heard any sort of backlash to that. But when these Companions came out, I was getting all sorts of DMs that were like, girl, they're not happy. Like, someone's got to pay for this. And it was like, who approved this? Like, who let this happen? And so, there was definitely some talk of there being maybe repercussions of this, or maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back of somebody at Wizards going, okay, we're going on years of like bannings now, and this was seen by some as a bridge too far.
Somebody at Wizards had the most epic from the top rope I told you so, like of all time. Like, they took pictures, they got autographs, they're like, I told you how bad this was and no one listened to me, and look what happened. Oh my God. Aaron, what's your number one?
All right, let's burn some bridges.
Oh boy.
So my number one is going for a pretty hefty price tag right now. I believe it's down to about $75. It's not worth it. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I don't think this card is worth the hype. I haven't seen anything to prove that it's worth the hype. I think it's fine. I think it's a fine card. I do not think it's a $75 card. I do not think it is worth the hype that it was given. I don't think it's going to have the impact on Commander that people were afraid it was going to. And it's just fine in the way that a card can be fine. My number one's Jeweled Lotus. So Jeweled Lotus was printed in Commander Legends. It's a 0 mana cost card. It's an artifact. You can tap and sack it, and you get 3 mana of any one color, like a Black Lotus, and you spend this mana only to cast your commander. Okay. I remember when this card came out and all of the what if scenarios that were all over Twitter of like, well, what are you going to do when you're staring down a turn 1 Grand Arbiter Augustin the 4th? You're not going to like that, are you? No one is doing that. I promise you. And, this card was going for crazy, 150 pre-orders?
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Absurd. And they were speculating that this card was going to ruin Commander and everybody would need one. And it was going to turn ramp into this rat race that you were going to you'd have to do it or you were going to get left in the dust. And this was going to be the moment Commander had gone too far and Gavin had gone too far and people were angry. And it's just, it's not that great. Like, it's just, it's dead. Like, so if you don't have this in your opening hand, it doesn't do anything. You draw this on turn 7. Okay, you can only spend it on your commander.
Right?
You can only spend it on your commander. Not every commander wants to be ramped out right away. Some commanders require a little bit of setup. Muldrotha is one of those. Marquez is another one of those where, yeah, I can cast Muldrotha on turn 6, but if I don't have a graveyard, it's not worth a damn. And so not every commander is going to want this. Not every play group is going to require it. It's just okay. But it had such lofty ambitions. The word Lotus really threw people off. And it's okay, but
the foil extended art is over $425, and I can't.
No.
I for one expected this price to just completely fall out. Just like it goes down to $20, maybe 25, or the extended art's maybe 50 or something. But I mean, the price is hell on EDH Rec. It's in 3,800 decks.
There's just other things that you would rather have, and that's a really popular topic in Commander nowadays. Is how are we building our decks? You have some people that are kind of rebelling against the formula, because right now Commander decks do feel very formulaic. There are literal formulas on MTG Goldfish that you can download that say, I need 3 graveyard hate pieces, I need 2 board wipes. And so, there are people that are starting to challenge that of maybe we should be running like more spot removal, maybe we should be running more answers. Why are we running 17 ramp cards? And so, this is a card that you really want to be drawing this at certain points of the game. Like, are you going to tutor for this? Like, I just feel like there are so many other cards that you would rather have other than this.
But the panache of the word Lotus, making 3 mana, 0 cost.
Yeah, I mean, the cloud and the gravitas of the word Lotus carries a lot of weight here. I think that the card, again, I agree with you. I think the card's fine. Like, it's fair. It's okay. The issue with it is what everyone wanted it to be, what everyone believed it to be, the pre-order price. People are willing to pay, clearly, $150 for this card, even though I look at that price tag and I think to myself, who is paying $150 for that effect? And it's, but I also feel like this is a card that would give me joy if I cast it. Like if I get the effect,
joy for you.
Yeah, this would spark joy for me because I would get to pay 0 mana, put a Lotus from my hand onto the battlefield, put it into my graveyard for 3 mana. The mana itself isn't going to do anything crazy, but it's not upsetting me in a way that other Commander Legends cards did.
Well, for my number 1, this was Ruben's number 3 by process of elimination, I think. And this was the card I did not choose as my number 1 card of 2020. I chose the whole cycle of Pathway lands and stuff. But I couldn't resist the opportunity to put this card at the tippity top of the worst cards. Now, look, when Wizards... Magic is a game of rate, okay? Yeah. Magic is a game of rate. How much are you getting for how much you're putting in? And they pushed that little rate bar off the charts, snapped off the little thing that was showing you to start with Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. This card is $40 freaking dollars.
I will have you know, this just came in. Uro just won the Vintage PTQ today.
Oh my God, of course.
Do you know how long we have been blessed to have not had Uro be a problem in Vintage, and now
too late.
It's
too late.
Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is a green, blue, and a generic mana for a 6/6 legendary Elder Giant, a mythic from Theros Beyond Death, of course. When Uro enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever Uro enters the battlefield or attacks, you may gain 3 life and draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. That doesn't put it into play tapped. There's nothing special beyond that. You get all the goodies and then some, and you can escape it for blue, blue, green, green, and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost. This card's stupid. This is the rate that I'm talking about. This is what's the rate for the giant, you know, for getting the rampant growth? What's the rate for gaining 3 life? What's the rate for getting it when you play it or attack with it? What's the rate that you can rebuy a friggin' 6/6 for the rest of the game?
That's the big thing for me is as a spell, you know, first of all, as a spell, it's kind of broken because Growth Spiral got banned.
That's right.
At green, blue, instant, similar effect.
Right.
For a colorless Moor, at sorcery speed, you're gaining 3 life also. So that's already a good spell.
Yes.
But having it as a win condition later in the game, and also you get 4 copies of Growth Spiral in your deck,
right?
Like it all combines together to make this ridiculously powerful effect. And that I think that they just didn't understand how good replacing a card and gaining 3 life is.
Well, and you have a 6/6, like when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice it to the oven. You can toss it with the new fling that we got. There's all sorts of crazy stuff you do this thing.
Yeah, I talked about this on the last episode. You know, I think you're right. You know, they didn't really understand the impact of this card, not only in its power level, but the psychology of it. This is a style of play that people want to be doing, where this is seeing play in Modern, this is seeing play in Legacy, this is now seeing play in Vintage, apparently, where people have decided that they want the safety and the comfort of incremental, incidental life gain. They want to draw cards. They want to play lands from their hand. They don't want to rock the boat. Again, people don't play Storm and Reanimator anymore in Legacy. Why would you when you can have the comfort and safety of Uro? You know, there are combo decks in Legacy that are not even combo decks anymore. They are now mid-range decks because these people have convinced themselves that they need this safety blanket, that they need
birthing
this life
codification of combo.
Exactly. And so I think that's a shame when you have people that don't necessarily want to feel that thrill of, like, you know, a Storm or a Reanimator or a Belcher. They want that security. And I think that's fascinating, but I also think it's a little sad in a way because I love those older formats for the crazy combos that you get that rush for. And now it's just this flaccid, you know, repetitive magic where it's just like, what happened?
The other thing that's interesting to me is way back when we first started doing top 10s, we did top 10 white cards, red cards, etc. Then we did the guild combos. And when we did Simic, we were like, Simic is the worst 2-color combination. None of the cards in our top 10 made us excited. I think my number 1 was like Mystic Snake or something.
Your number 1 was Shardless Agent. My number
Agent.
My number 1 was Mystic Snake.
Yeah.
And Shardless Agent was also Aaron's number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you look at the Simic cards that have been printed since then, I think that I would have probably between 5 and 7 cards above Shardless Agent and Mystic Snake printed in the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Our number 2 was Coiling Oracle.
They're really,
right.
and they're really
Oko, Uro, Growth Spiral, Neoform, Like, the list goes on.
There really was a turning point. I remember when I was getting ready to build my Vanifar deck because my boyfriend's stream and his podcast, I was a guest on a show. And part of being on a show is you have these challenges. And so I was essentially assigned a theme. And so I was building a Vanifar deck. And so I remember going to Scryfall and specifically looking up Simic cards. And stinkers, like going back to Lorwyn, going back to Ravnica, and just going, oof, these are
man,
bad.
here's
And
a
then
wistful Selkie.
And then just
We did
getting
it.
to a point where they went from being like flat out stinkers to just, oh, I should be playing all of these. And you're right. There was a very clear line of when Simic went from being, almost intentionally underpowered to just hitting the gas. And there's been no turning back.
Right. I mean, Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy was out there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, all that
Another
stuff.
one.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And Thrasios came out. Of course, Oko showed up.
Right.
I mean, even the new Coma Cosmos Serpent thing that makes a 3/3 Serpent every single upkeep. That thing's nuts.
It's a 3/3 every turn.
That's right. Free
Call
call
the
there.
herd every turn.
That's right. And that said, that is our top 10 worst cards of 2020. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you review, take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10. And we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. Please vent. Let us know. Yeah. And we'll
don't vent about us. Like vent
about
our
2020.
Yeah.
The cards of 2020.
Don't make it
select
personal.
our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
I think I speak for all of us when I say I'm so happy 2020 is over.
It's over.
Well, now we have a whole another year of broken cards to look forward to.
Whee!
You can cascade into a planeswalker now, y'all.
You certainly can. Cascade, cascade, cascade. As we go to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AlterSleeves.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.